I'm so happy to have Mary Foelster back with us to give us the current landscape on relief programs, what's subject to audit, what some of those audit requirements might be. So, Mary, thank you for coming back. This has been a hot topic, and I appreciate you coming back to talk to us about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. I was in a meeting yesterday where I heard someone from GAO say in total, the pandemic funding so far is over $4 trillion. And while not all of that is running through single audits, I'm aware that well over $1 trillion is running through federal programs that will become subject to single audit.
And that's a great data point.
Yeah. So I guess what I'd like to do, since I know a good part of the town hall audience may not audit governments or not-for-profits, they focus on for-profit entities. I thought I'd start with kind of running through some of the key programs that the for-profit entities that have received certain funding are becoming subject to audit on. I'll go ahead and say that PPP is not on this slide. Hopefully by now we've all talked about it long enough and know that that particular program was not designated as subject to single audit. So fortunately for our team, that's one that we didn't have to work on. Lisa, I know you had a lot of work to do on that program, but it has been interesting to see for the first time, really, the federal government deciding that some of the funding that's being passed down to for-profit entities will become subject to single audit or something like single audit. So the good news on this slide, the first two programs that are listed are not subject to single audit. So the restaurant revitalization and the EIDL loans are not in the bucket for being subject to audit. I will caution again that this slide focuses on for-profit entities, and some of the programs that I'm talking about, like EIDL loans, for example, there's a different answer when you're looking at governments and not-for-profits. But for purposes of for-profits, the EIDL loans are not in. The next two programs on this slide really are the ones we've been spending the most time on recently. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant went primarily to for-profit entities. We've heard there's between 3,000 and 4,000 total for-profit entities that got this funding. And many of them will have 750,000 or more, which is the trigger for having an audit of this program. The SBA, as you all know, is a very small federal agency managing this program, has spent pretty much all of their time so far standing the program up and getting the funding out. So we have just started engaging with SBA on exactly what the audit requirement, how it would be implemented for these for-profit entities. So if you look at the guidance that they've issued so far, one piece of guidance says that the audit could be either a financial statement audit or a single audit or a program-specific audit. Another piece of guidance that they've issued talks about either a financial audit of the award or a single audit or program-specific audit. We believe, based on our most recent conversations with them, that they're going to go back to the financial statement audit or single audit. But we have a meeting with them next week to really begin fleshing out the details on these engagements. And we are stressing to them that many of these for-profits have 12/31 year ends, and the guidance is needed. So if you have clients that receive this funding that are for-profit entities, I think my advice would be just to hold off a bit longer until you really start digging into this so that we can work with SBA to get the guidance out there that's needed to carry out the engagements.
So Mary, a question for you. If we get a program audit, is that going to need to be under governmental auditing standards?
Yes. So it would be an audit that would be done under the AICPA's auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. And those government auditing standards are issued by GAO, and they have certain criteria that auditors need to comply with to be in accordance with their standards. They have CPE requirements, they have independence requirements that are different than the AICPA's code. So for anyone that's getting into these engagements that have not really delved into government auditing standards or what a compliance audit is all about, I would caution to tread very carefully and really think about it before you get into it. And certainly if you're going to get into it, to make sure that you've gotten training to make sure you understand what all the rules are about that. And the Quality Center is offering a lot of almost everything we're doing right now to the broader public and membership because of the crisis. So a lot of our events and things like that are being made available either live or in an archived fashion on our website. And I have some of those later in the slides.
And I guess we have a concern because a lot of these entities may not have been audited before ever, right?
Right.
Because they're small and they're not used to getting this amount of funding.
That is correct. And so that, it's adding to the challenge of doing the audit, right? And not only that, these audits are maybe a 1 year, 2 year thing. It's not like it's going to be an extended period. So that is a challenge. And we have been communicating to OMB and several of the other key grant making agencies just about the challenges and around all of this, and the need to make sure that we have a pipeline of qualified auditors that are going to be available and ready to do the audits, and that we have entities that are ready to be audited. So certainly I think they've been hearing us, and in some cases anyway, and attempting to put out guidance that will help make things easier for the entities to understand what they need to comply with, as well as for the auditor to carry out the engagement. So the other program here, the Provider Relief Fund, is a massive, big new program. We've spent almost a year working with the Department of Health and Human Services on what the for-profit audit for entities receiving this funding would look like. And when I say these entities could include large for-profit hospitals down to doctors' practice groups. We've heard from associations of all different sorts of doctors wondering and asking us about, what is this requirement about? How do I find an auditor? What do I need to do? So we have been working very diligently with HHS to come up with an approach for the for-profit audits that will be something our members can do and something that will be beneficial for HHS. The nuance about this particular one is that they're allowing what they call a financial audit of the award, or a single audit / program specific audit. And I don't want to get into too much detail, but we really think most entities will choose the financial audit under government auditing standards. And so we are within a couple weeks of releasing a practice aid, which I'll talk about on the next slide, that will help auditors do this work. And it's pretty comprehensive. It starts off with a series of frequently asked questions. It talks about what the schedule that would be audited would look like. It talks about what type of report the auditor would issue. It talks about what the notes to that schedule might look like. Again, these are all illustrative. And we also include a primer on what government auditing standards is. Again, we talked about already, a lot of auditors may not be as familiar with government auditing standards. So that is something that we're really very happy to be almost done with. And we've also just had a web event on this. Basically, it was kind of a pre-release of some of the guidance that's going to be in the practice aid. And that event is being archived on our Quality Center website, and it is available and open to the public. So we are not limiting it only to GAQC members. And so we may even be rebroadcasting that event at some point in the near future, because we had so many people interested in the topic. So if you're auditing a for-profit healthcare entity or a doctor's office, again, some of these entities have not had audits before. If you're approached to do the audit, we would highly recommend that you check out the guidance that we're getting ready to release, because it will answer a lot of questions about what the engagement is about.
I know none of my doctor clients were in practices that were getting audited, so I am sure that's going to catch them off guard.
It will. And they have their own associations, right, that are trying to help them. And it's going to be a challenge. And again, these entities many of them have 12/31 year ends, the for-profits. So now is the time that people need to start, beginning to think about how to do these engagements.
Okay.
So another key document in doing single audits, and this is relevant not only to people doing for-profit engagements of entities getting some of this funding, but also auditors that are doing audits of state and local governments or not-for-profit organizations, is the OMB Compliance Supplement. And because of the pandemic, this important document has been delayed both in 2021 and even last year in 2020. So this slide is really just informing everyone, if you're not aware, that the 2021 original release of the supplement came out in August. There was an addendum that was issued in December that included the very large new coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery fund, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes, as well as an update to the Education Stabilization Fund, again, a very large new program that went to institutions of higher ed and K through 12 schools. And then an addendum 2 was just issued in January. So keep in mind that the supplement applies beginning last June, for June 30 year ends 21, and some of these pieces we're just getting now. So that is causing, some serious backlogs in practitioner schedules and getting these jobs done. So it is what it is. At least now we have all the parts, but now there's this influx of auditors trying to get out there and finish their single audits.
Good to know.
This is another program. Again, I put it in even though I don't think it's going to be a big deal to the for-profits, but I mention it just based on the vast size of this program. It's $350 billion. Department of Treasury is the agency that's sponsoring it. It went out to over 30,000 entities, states, local governments, very, very, very small local governments that typically wouldn't even normally get federal funding in a number high enough to get a single audit, and also tribal entities. So this program just had final rules issued for it, and I provided the link there, and there's an overview from Treasury of the final rule that's 44 pages long. So that can only tell you how long the final rule for this program is. There's a lot of requirements that surround this program. We have been working with Treasury and OMB recently. Again, I mentioned that concern about just the number of these engagements and our concern that there may not be enough auditors that actually have the qualifications under government auditing standards and single audit rules to see if there's a way that they can come up with an approach that may be more simplistic than a full-blown single audit. For some of these entities, if they happen to get other small funding and then this new program throws them over the threshold, not only would they have to have a program audit, but that would throw them into the realm of a financial statement audit, because a single audit requires a financial statement audit. So that's a big burden, and some of these entities are very small. It's rather intriguing. You might want to go look on the website. Think of the smallest town you have in your area and look on the website to see how much money they got from this program. It's quite amazing. So the good news is that we've gotten some traction on this with Treasury and OMB, and we're starting to work with them on coming up with an approach that maybe would let some of these entities get something less than a full-blown single audit. So with this number of entities, I would just guess some of the firms watching today could be approached by different entities that are looking for audits, and this program would be the driver of that. So we hope to have this settled with Treasury and OMB in the coming weeks. There'll be some ongoing meetings, and hopefully we can communicate back through the town hall and through the quality center as things progress on this program.
So we'll stay tuned for the update, but we wish you good luck in your conversations with them.
Yeah. And then quickly, Lisa, just the last slide here, just a couple of other kind of hodgepodge things. We are in the process of working with OMB on the 22 supplement. They've been getting a lot of pressure to get it out more quickly this year. And so their goal is to get it out on April 30th. It remains to be seen whether that will actually happen. But I will mention that there will be a section for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant that will be added to the supplement for 2022. And we are pressing OMB and the SBA, once they finalize that, perhaps they could release it early so that all of the 2021 engagements that would include this funding can see it and use it for purposes of their auditing. I know audit extensions is another hot topic. The 6-month audit extension that was out there for single audits only ran through June 30, 2021 year ends. And we have been strongly advocating for an extension of the submission extensions through at least the 12/31/21 year ends. That would certainly help some of these for-profit entities that are getting thrown into this. So we issued a rather strongly worded letter just in the last couple of weeks over to OMB on this, and I know that they are considering it at their policy level. So we have our fingers crossed that maybe we can get a little bit more time for some of these engagements.
That has been a common question, so thank you for bringing that up. We're getting lots of questions from firms trying to figure out, how to schedule out their work, how to get it planned. So thanks for bringing that up.
And then lastly, our COVID resource page, I put the link here so that folks can take a look at that and see what we've put out there. And finally, kind of in the midst of all this, I just want to make sure that practitioners don't forget that the AICPA auditing standards that updated the report language became effective for 12/31/21 year ends and later. So we did have to update all of our report illustrations, and I've indicated on this slide, how folks can find that new updated language.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Sure.